I declare this meeting of the Port Phillip City Council open, and I welcome the members of the community that are here tonight. Can everyone hear me? It doesn't appear so. Can we turn the microphone up? People are saying turn it up. The City of Port Phillip respectfully acknowledges the Yalukit Willem clan of the Boonwurrung, who pay our respects to their elders, both past and present, and we acknowledge and uphold their traditional relationship to this land. I just wanted to, before I start, acknowledge that this is the first meeting that we've had in this new building. This is the South Melbourne Primary School, and the South Melbourne Primary School has significant investment by the City of Port Phillip in its community facilities, and this room is one of the rooms that we manage. The sporting courts, maternal child health, the childcare kinder area, and also we have invested also in the park that's being developed across the road. So welcome, and so just bear with us if there's any issues tonight. I'm sure we'll be fine, but it is the first time that we have met here. Council is a local law that determines how this meeting will be conducted. There's a time allotted in tonight's agenda for public question time. During public question time, members of the public can ask specific questions on general matters other than those that are relating to a topic that's on the agenda for tonight. Members of the public are only to ask a specific question and shall not provide any comments or contextual statements relating to that question. Consequently, the official minutes of the meeting will only record the question asked and any response given. The number of questions that a member of the public may ask shall be at the discretion of the chairperson. There is also an opportunity for members of the public to ask a question or make a comment on a specific item on tonight's agenda. This will be done prior to the council considering the item. We encourage questions or comments from the public that are directed through the Mayor, are not defamatory, abusive or objectionable in language or substance, but rather are presented in a spirit of mutual respect of the council and the community. We ask all speakers to abide by the directions of the chair. If you wish to ask a question or speak to a report, please complete the blue form that's available at the table just outside the chamber and hand it to a staff member. And I encourage you to limit your questions and comments to around 3 minutes and avoid repeating any points that have already been made by other speakers. And please note, all council meetings are now being live streamed. Live streaming and recording allows the community to watch and to listen in real time, providing greater access to council decision making and debate, and providing openness and transparency. The live stream of this meeting is available on council's website, and the recording of this meeting will also be available a few days after the meeting on council's website and the YouTube channel. The camera will film councillors at this meeting. However, care is taken not to record or film images of the members of the public. If a member of the public asks a question or makes a comment about an agenda item, they'll not be filmed, but their voice will be heard in the live stream and recorded. So please also note that with council's local law that this meeting cannot be filmed or audio taped unless permission is granted by the Mayor. Tonight's meeting is the first public event to be held by council in this facility, and being the first meeting and in the interests of ensuring your safety, it's important that I provide you with the building's emergency processes in the unlikely event of an evacuation. If you picked up an emergency evacuation sheet at the entrance, you'll see 2 exits that will be used during an evacuation. These exits are the stairs on the left of this space and the stairwell further down the hall. And if you hear a whoop, whoop, whoop sound, please proceed to exit the building in a safe and calm manner. And please follow the instructions of the Chief Warden, Aaron McLean. Where are you, Aaron? He's waving down the back there. And the Fire Wardens, who will have vests and hard hats in an emergency if it's necessary. The Chief Warden will be in the white vest, and he was the one just waving just then. Okay, so now we've got out the formalities, we'll get on to the agenda. So number 1, apologies, and councillors, we're all here, so there's no apologies. Item 2, which is the minutes of the previous meeting. The minutes of the ordinary meeting held on the 21st of February 2018 have been circulated. Councillors, are there any questions of the meeting, of the minutes? There are none. Councillor Baxter, you would like to move. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Simic. I'll now put that motion. All those in favour? That's carried unanimously. Thank you. Move to item 3, which is declarations of conflicts of interest. Does any councillor have a conflict of interest in any matters that we're discussing tonight? There are none. Item 4, which is petitions and joint letters. And councillors, we have 1 joint letter and 1 petition on tonight's agenda. So we'll go to 4.1 first, which is a joint letter relating to the proposed Carmichael mine by the Adani Group. And councillors, there's 4 people that have requested to speak to these. I'll ask Mr. Peter Moriartis, please, to come forward. Welcome. So everyone's got the same T-shirts on. If you just have a seat there, if you turn the microphone on, please state your name and suburb for the record. If you could turn the microphone on, please.
Peter Moriartis, St Kilda. Thank you for placing our letter on the Council's agenda and the opportunity to speak to it. Our letter to Council is written to support Byron Shire Council's request to all councils in Australia. Byron Council makes 2 requests to councils. First, that councils desist now and into the future from engaging with businesses connected to or doing business with Adani. And second, that councils make a public statement of opposition to the Adani mine. Members of Melbourne Port Stop Adani, of which I am a member, will speak to our letter in 4 parts. I will start by giving some context for wanting to stop Adani. Why stop Adani? There are many perspectives on why Adani should be stopped. From Indigenous people whose place will be destroyed, to farmers who are rightly concerned about the loss of water for their farmlands, to other coal miners who see Adani as a cheap competitor. But I will concentrate on the climate change perspective that has got so many of us ordinary citizens wanting to stop Adani. Scientists tells us that without a drastic reduction in global warming emissions, the world is on a path to at least 4 degrees Celsius or more by the end of the century. The planet will be unbearably hotter, sea levels are at risk of rising by 3 metres by century's end, the oceans are likely to acidify by more than 30%. Doing nothing means the world as we know it will be devastated. According to Bill McKinnon, environmentalist, fossil fuel emissions must be reduced by 4.6% annually to limit warming to 2 degrees by 2050. And even 2 degrees is thought by many to be terribly dangerous. If you pause to think about it, reducing emissions by that much annually will be an incredibly hard thing to do in the context of the grow or collapse economic system we're in. One international response, of course, has been the Paris Agreement to control global emissions of global warming gases by specifying what each nation can emit. A complementary and essential response is to keep unnecessary fossil fuels that cause the emissions in the ground. Keeping fossil fuels in the ground is the crucial impetus behind the Stop Adani movement. But why focus on Adani? What would the Adani mine be? It will be one of the biggest thermal coal mines in the world. If we transposed it over Melbourne, it would go from Melbourne Airport to Mordialloc, to Dandenong and to Epping. The land of the Wangan-Jangalingu people, what the miners call the overburden, will be removed and people would peer down a black canyon 200 metres deep for the length and breadth I've described. The coal extracted will be washed with groundwater for which the company has a 60-year free licence and put on diesel trains that will travel 400 kilometres day in, day out to the coast where the coal will be put on coal ships. The global thermal market will be flooded with cheap coal, recreating a cheap but deadly substitute to renewables. The ships, 500 more ships a year, will travel through the Great Barrier Reef to India, where the coal will be burnt to produce electricity.
Please come to the end, Mr Moriartis.
If the Adani mine were to go ahead, it would also pave the way for the opening of up to 9 other mines in the Galilee Basin, the second biggest untapped coal basin in the world. The Galilee Basin is bigger than the United Kingdom. I'll come to the end now. Port Phillip Council, through its sustainability strategy, is doing a lot in the municipality to prevent climate change, and so are lots of other councils. To honour that work, it should, with other councils, lend its powerful voice to stop Adani. Anselm will now speak from our group about why the council should join Byron Shire Council to publicly oppose the mine. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Moriartis. Anselm Van Rood, I apologise if I have...
Oh, that's pretty good.
Oh. Please state your name and suburb.
My name is Anselm Van Rood. I live in St Kilda. The most obvious question about what we're doing here is why should Port Phillip Council, which is a long, long way away from Adani, why should we be concerned about doing it? Well, to me the most obvious answer is that we're a seaside suburb, and that if any of you saw the Four Corners program on Monday night on ABC television, that showed how councils and big companies and corporations all around the country are now building into their insurance policy the risks that come from oceans rising and from climate change. As a seaside suburb, it directly affects all of us. My property, the property presumably that is owned by anybody who lives in this suburb, is going to be affected by it. So it does directly affect people living in Melbourne ports and in Port Phillip. The other reason why Port Phillip Council should be concerned about this issue is that we here in this part of the country have a reputation for being socially progressive and enlightened, and we could set a very powerful example to other councils, other political communities all around the country by taking a very public stance to disengage with anybody that's involved in this crazy project. I'm going to have a look at my notes. The reason that I'm sitting here and rather uncomfortably speaking in public is that I'm a grandfather, and I'm terribly concerned about the kind of world that my grandchildren are going to grow up in. And it seems to me that this project, which by every measure seems to me suicidal, that we're going to start burning huge amounts of coal at the very time when the whole scientific community is telling us that of the destructive effects of that. So we have to take action. Everybody in every part of society has to take action. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Van Rood. Mr Bryn Jeffson, please. Miss, my apologies. Welcome.
Hello.
Please state your name and suburb.
I'm Bryn Jepson from St Kilda. I just want to speak quickly about when I was in university. I was part of the Fossil Free Universities campaign, attempting to get our university to divest from fossil fuels. And I think this proposal from the Byron Bay Council is very similar in that we want to get the flow of money and the flow of resources out of Adani and give it to something more sustainable and more clean. So I just want to say that with the fossil-free campaign at uni, we were only successful because we all joined together and we got more unis on board around the world. So that it was, you know, in America, the UK, and other places as well. And it was only successful, because we joined together. And, you know, I think your council has the opportunity to take the lead. I want to reiterate what was said before. You can take the lead on this and, you know, take the fight for the people. And I don't know where I'm going now. Anyway, I think, you can achieve so much more when you go together. So I urge you to consider Byron Bay's proposal and help the movement grow. That's all I want to say.
Thank you, Ms Jepson. Ms Pam O'Neill, please. Welcome, Ms O'Neill.
Hi. Thank you for allowing us to speak. Firstly, I'd like to say that I'm one of the four
Can
people
you state your name and suburb, please, for the record? Thank
I'm so
you.
excited about speaking. I'm Pam O'Neill from St Kilda. I'm one of the four people speaking, but I'd just like to point out there's about 30 or so other supporters here in the room. So first, I'd like to share with you how across the world, and in particular where national and state governments are not taking adequate action to reduce the impact of climate change, local governments are listening to their citizens, stepping up and taking the lead. We're requesting that you take the lead in advocating about climate change and the impact of fossil fuel on the environment through the actions we've proposed, namely that you not do business with any organisations connected to Adani, and you publicise that you've done that, and the reasons for your decision. I'm sure you already know that it's about some instances of local government board-level action, and I'd like to share a couple of examples with you. Copenhagen, Berlin and over 150 European cities have in the past 18 months divested from fossil fuels. In doing so, the mayor of Örebro in Sweden said, "We need to take action on climate change at various levels." New York City has just announced in January that it wants to lead the assault on climate change, and the Trump administration, with a plan to divest $5 billion from fossil fuels and sue the world's most powerful oil companies over their contribution to dangerous global warming. Local councils have a unique and powerful place. They are close to the people. They must listen to the people, yet they are the voice of the people as well as being their leaders. And the influence of a local council can be great at national and state level, as well as at local, of course, when it advocates on behalf of its citizens and models behaviour for other levels of government. Port Phillip Council taking the action we propose is consistent with and complements your strategic plan. In the plan, you acknowledge that climate change is one of our key challenges. You described some of the likely impacts of climate change on the citizens and services of Port Phillip and say the greenhouse gas emissions is one important way to address climate change. And under Key Direction 3, you aim for outcomes in 2027, such as a city with lower carbon emissions and a city that is resilient to climate change. This action we're proposing would show that you're not just doing many worthwhile things at local level, which you are, but you are also trying to influence others at a broader level. You can have an impact on other local councils, state and federal government and the corporate sphere. And in doing so, you will be listening to the voice of the citizens of Port Phillip and be supported strongly by them. We at Melbourne Port Stop of Adani are currently undertaking a monster message exercise. Many of you would have seen this at local markets. Since last December, we have been talking to people at local markets about the Adani mine and collecting signatures from those who want to tell candidates to the next federal election that they are against the Adani mine and that the position of each candidate on the issue will influence their vote. We have well over 1,500 signatures and we're continuing to do this. And now people see our sign and often queue to put their name on our message. It wasn't the same in December, now there's a massive change. The issue is enormous in the municipality and it's growing, and more people will know about it. Not surprisingly, since, as you have rightly said in your plan, Climate change will have significant negative impacts on the people and the environment of the municipality.
Please come to the end.
We urge you to listen to the voice of the people and undertake the actions we have proposed to you. Thank you.
Councillors, that's the end of the public request to speak to this item. Do you have any questions of the officers? Councillor Baxter?
There we go. Basically, now that we've received this petition and the recommendation is that we sort of know what are the next steps from here about the request that's been made of us.
Mr Carroll?
Through you, Madam Mayor, officers are currently reviewing the implications and potential for council to respond to the request from the community, and would provide feedback to you at the next council meeting about that review. I'd like to highlight that this council has had a strong commitment to sustainable investment. Upwards of over 86% last year was invested in fossil-free institutions. We're currently tracking around 76% in the CEO report, and we are working all the time. We recently reviewed our investment policy, which you approved a couple of weeks ago, to strengthen our ability to invest in sustainable institutions, including those that are fossil-free. So there's a strong commitment, but officers need to do a little bit more work to come back and advise you appropriately.
Sorry, Mr Carroll, just to clarify, does that mean that officers will bring back a report that will go on the agenda with the recommendation?
That's right.
Thank you.
Any other questions, councillors? Councillor Simic?
Mr Carroll mentioned that we were tracking on 86% and the CEO report currently has us on about 76%. It seems like we've gone backwards a bit on that measure. Is there a reason for that?
Through you, Madam Mayor, so I said last financial year at 86%. We've slipped back to about 73%. You would have recalled earlier in the year or last year there was a downgrade by Standards & Poor's of a range of financial institutions. Many of those are the ones that we've been investing in for fossil-free institutions. Our prior investment policy limited our ability to invest in certain types of rated entities, which reduced our ability to invest in fossil-free institutions. You recently approved changes to your investment policy based on officers' recommendation that enables us to invest more in those institutions, and we're hopeful over the next 3 to 6 months that you'll see an increase again in that figure.
Thank you, and we can discuss more about that in the CEO report. Councillor Simic, you have another question?
Has council taken any steps to date to oppose the Carmichael Adani mine?
Through you, Madam Mayor, officers, we have an institutional banking arrangement and some investments with Commonwealth Bank. There was some media reports last year that they were considering potentially funding the Adani mine. We wrote several times and had several communications with our relationship manager and with the CEO of the bank, expressing our concerns about any potential transaction with CBA. So we have had we have put on the record with that institution the concerns that we had. They haven't gone as far as to completely rule out investing, but we know at this stage that they haven't been involved with them.
Any other questions, councillors? If not, we have a officer's recommendation. Do I have a mover for that or something different? Councillor Simic to move. Councillor Baxter to second. Councillor Simic, would you like to speak to the motion?
I'd first of all like to thank everyone who came tonight and so eloquently spoke about the importance of us taking action around what's happening and propose action around this mine. It staggers belief that the government's so far supported a mine which will have detrimental effect on our climate and our future, and that political leaders aren't standing up more readily to oppose the Carmichael Adani mine. I think community has been heard loud and clear for us here in Melbourne Ports, but also more broadly, we've got a by-election happening in Batman coming up in the next few weeks. And one of the biggest issues for that campaign has been support for the Adani mine. I think that's important and will continue to be an important issue going into the next federal election. So I agree with everything that's been said tonight. I'm a big supporter, obviously, of stopping Adani, and I look forward to the officer's recommendation and their proposed steps forward so that we can consider them and take further action.
Councillor Baxter.
Yeah, look, I'll be reasonably quick. I think pretty much all the evidence out there shows that this is not just a dud project in that it won't deliver all of the glowing, amazing things that Adani says it will, but it would do an enormous amount of damage, and we're constantly teetering on the edge of, well, it can't possibly go ahead because it's such a dud project, and why would anyone fund that? And but what if it does? We're all going to die. So it's certainly the momentum that comes from the community of a bunch of very concerned people who are continuing to make this an issue no matter where you are, that people should know about this, and people should know about the fossil fuels in the Galilee Basin's capacity to literally change our world's climate almost by itself at this point, given all the other stuff that's going on. I think that pressure needs to stay on, and I think that there is absolutely a role for all levels of government to keep that pressure on. I will note that, as Mr. Carroll said, I don't think that we're terrifically exposed when it comes to Adani. I don't think we have much to do with them anyway, but I think that it's good to see people from the community coming out and in such force to urge us to be part of what I think is a really influential movement. So thanks to everyone for coming out.
Thank you, Councillor Baxter. Would anyone else like to speak to the motion? Councillor Copsey.
I can't put it much better than our speakers have tonight, so thank you very much. I won't repeat the points that have been made, but just say that I've heard you very clearly. You made the points that we are a Bayside municipality. We have a very seasonal business economy around here as well, which in large part depends on the natural beauty. So I think that there's a real understanding in Port Phillip of just what the communities that are in the region that would be directly affected by Adani means. And I think it's wonderful that you're taking a stand with that community in mind, with our community in mind, and you're doing an excellent job of getting the message out. Thank you for bringing it into this chamber tonight. And all I can say is keep up the good work. I've had these earrings for nearly a year and I wear them out quite a lot. And about a year ago, people used to stop me and say, "Oh, what's Adani?" They don't do that anymore. Now I get lots of smiles and waves and fist bumps. So keep up the amazing work that your campaign is doing. You're making a big difference.
Councillor Brand.
Yes, I'd like to speak in favour. I don't think it's absolutely obvious that a local council like us should be weighing into issues which are really fundamentally at a federal level. But I think there is a logic that impels me to want to be involved in this. Climate change is obviously a huge issue to the self-interest of the city of Port Phillip, at least in the long-term future, and we're doing everything we can, I think, to be a good citizen ourselves, a good environmental citizen ourselves, and walking the walk, and as well as doing the talking the talk. But I think we're doing quite a good job of that. But that by itself is going to make a tiny, tiny contribution to the world effort at calming down climate change. And I think that the hope that we have is using our own performance as best we can as a sort of a moral basis to advocate upwards and to lend our voice to join with others in bigger issues. And this is a classic example of that. I don't think that there's a more obvious single discrete issue, yes or no sort of issue, that we could do as a nation than to just decide not to mine the Adani mine. And I think we just, it's probably the best piece of advocacy if we can help achieve that, you know, on an individual discrete basis of something that we can probably do. And I think it's really the best way we can serve our own self-interest, because our own self-interest inevitably, in this case, in this issue, is going to have to be played out at the global scale. So that's what we're doing.
Any other councillor wishing to speak to the item? Councillor Simic, would you like to close?
Just to say that working together we can stop Adani. As we're talking, I was reminded that about 5 years ago I was in Western Australia in Perth working with the Greens on the campaign to stop James Price Point and a big gas development going up at James Price Point, which still remains a very important site to the Aboriginal community. It was also a place that, if destroyed, would be irreparably destroyed. And they wanted to put a gas plant there that would emit as much carbon dioxide in 1 year as the whole of Japan. The community worked together, and we did stop the development at James Price Point. And I believe that if we keep working together, we will stop Adani.
Thank you. I'll now put that motion. All those in favour? That's carried unanimously. Thank you. Now we'll move on to... Thank you, councillors. We'll move on to... lost my page. 4.2. Which is a petition was received from the chairman of the Domain Owners Corporation at number 1 Albert Road, Melbourne, with 122 signatories expressing concern about the Domain Precinct Development Plan. Now, councillors, I don't believe we've got any speakers from members of the public. Do you have any questions of the officers? Councillor Brand.
I just want to clarify that the petition that is being submitted to us was actually started or completed before we made our response to these issues in a council resolution some time ago. Yeah.
Ms Ferris-Miles.
Through you, Madam Mayor. Yes, that is correct. This matter was heard before Council on the 13th of December 2017. What was brought to our attention was this petition was presented by a member of the public to that meeting, but we never formally received the petition in regard to good governance principles. So it was considered as part of Council's submission to the draft development plan for the Domain Precinct, but we thought it was only appropriate that the petition was formally noted and recorded in the record as received by Council. It also provided us an opportunity to be transparent, to provide an update in terms of work that Council officers have been doing since the 13th of December in relation to this matter.
Thank you, Ms Ferris-Miles. Any other questions, councillors? Then we have an officer's recommendation. Do I have a mover for that or something different? Councillor Pearl to move. Councillor Brand to second. Councillor Pearl, would you like to speak? Councillor Brand, would anyone else like to speak? Then I'll put that motion. All those in favour? That's carried unanimously. So we move on to the sealing schedule, item 5, and councillors, we have no documents requiring sealing. Item 6, which is public question time. And we have 5 members of the public that have requested to speak. Mr James Woolcott, please. Willett. Sorry, the light's shining on the... Apologies. You could please state your name and suburb for the record.
My name is James Willett. I live in Middle Park. My questions are about Middle Park Library. First, the minutes of the council meeting of the 21st of February 2018 record that I asked questions about Middle Park Library that were taken on notice by the council officials. I have not received a response to those questions. In fact, other members of the community concerned about the library are still waiting for replies for questions sent to council officials from 3 months ago. When can I expect to have a reply?
Do you have any other questions?
Yes,
Councillor?
I do. Second, on the 15th of November 2017, a majority of the Port Phillip councillors voted for a plan to remove the books from Middle Park Library and install extra computers. When you were briefed by council officials on this plan, were you made aware that there is already a dedicated room above the library with computers that are being used for training purposes? In fact, the service is included in the list of courses and classes in the latest edition of diversity. My third question is, why does the council need to destroy a children's and adult book library to install more computers when in the very same building there are computers lying idle most days of the week?
Thank you, Mr. Willett. Ms. Jeffs, please.
Through you, Madam Mayor. So my apologies to Mr. Willett about the lack of response. So we'll receive that tomorrow personally, and they'll also be listed on Council's website in the minutes sections. The other questions, there'll be a report brought back to Council on the 21st of March with all of the results of the engagement and presenting some options for Council to consider. So the other two questions I believe are directed to the Council and will be considered as part of that 21st of March consideration.
You look confused, Mr. Willett, so
Yes,
we've got another meeting.
Yeah, my question was, were the councillors briefed by council officials about the room above the library that already exists with computers that are being used for training purposes when they were briefed on the plan for Middle Park Library? That was the question.
Thank you. I think we heard that, and the councillors may choose to answer that when they speak.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Willett. Mr. Jeffrey Love, please. Welcome, Mr. Love.
Thank you, Mayor, councillors and council officers for this opportunity. I'm Jeffrey Love and I live in St Kilda. My questions tonight, I've got three questions actually tonight, and they are, the first question is, are councillors and officers aware of the special Bayside Council meeting on the 28th of March to consider Elstonwick Park's future? I'd like to remind Council of its commitment to contribute to assessed flood mitigation options and potential contributions to future projects. That was a Council resolution of last year, I can't give the precise date, and it had an amendment moved by Councillor Gross, which specifically talked of making financial contribution to flood mitigation works in Elstonwick Park. And in fact, the Bayside Council, when it was at the meeting where it rejected option 1A, which is the one that we've been pursuing, did make note, I think point 6 of their resolution actually mentioned that offer by the City of Port Phillip for contributions to flood mitigation. The second question is, will Council use its good offices with Bayside Council to ensure an overall flood mitigation plan for the park, engaging Melbourne Water and the Cooperative Research Centre for Water Sensitive Cities, rather than a piecemeal approach? I mention this because the Oval 2 upgrade plans by Bayside Council seems set to proceed without considering flood mitigation, landscaping or a retaining wall along St Kilda Street,
which we consider vital for flood mitigation and has been documented in some Melbourne water proposals. The third question is a climate change related and council development related question on a slightly different area, and that is I would also like to urge council to include sea level rise and coastal flooding mitigation in its consideration of the marina development. Is this being done? Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Love. Mr. CEO wants to answer some of the questions.
Through you, Madam Mayor, I'll take the first three. We are aware of the meeting on the 28th, and we are aware of previous council resolutions in relation to Elstonwick Park North. In answer to your third question, that will be dependent on the decision of Bayside Council on the 28th and their deliberations. And I'll pass the fourth question to Mr. Carroll or Ms. McNeil around the St Kilda Marina. Thanks, Ms. McNeil.
Through you, Madam Mayor, as we work through the planning process for the St Kilda Marina, we will be certainly taking into account the need to build resilience and adaptation to climate change as part of any future redevelopment of that site.
Thank you, Ms. McNeil. Mr. George Kamov, please. Welcome. If you could please, I'm not sure, turn the microphone. No, it's already on. You state your name and suburb.
My name's George Kamov, and I'm from Port Melbourne. I've got no notes, so I'm just going to speak off the fly. I represent the Port Melbourne Baseball Club. I'm the current president there. Our club will be 90 next year, and thanks to council, we've got a magnificent field, which we've had for 5+ years. We currently play winter and summer, so there's 2 programs running. We're only just a summer organisation, but we've gone into the winter program as well to utilise the beautiful facilities there, but we've got no lights. So I'd like to table to council the possibility of getting some field lighting. That's it.
Thank you, Mr. Kamov. Maybe yes, Councillor Gross. Be saying what I was going to say, but.
Does the St Kilda Baseball Club have lights?
I don't think so, no. I'm not sure.
They do. They're in Albert Park.
Yeah, I know where they are. They play in a different division to us, so I haven't been in there for a little while.
Right.
The reason for the lights is throughout the winter season, like 5 o'clock it's dark, so it's very hard to do any of the training. And during the summer, we've got the possibility of playing night games there. So between 6 and 8 is the scheduled period for night games. We've also got the possibility of the Melbourne Aces, which is the national team for Melbourne. We've already had some training sessions there, but if we had lights we could entertain them, and there's lots of potential with that. The kids love it. There's a lot of spin-offs with that.
Sorry, you want to speak again, Councillor Gross?
The main competition for baseball's in winter?
No, summer.
Summer. Oh, okay.
Yeah. Although the winter program now, it's not as many teams, but it's slowly almost on par.
Right. Thanks.
So, Mr. Kamov, maybe the question is to the council that will the council consider lights in the next budget?
Yes.
And perhaps is there anything that you could offer more to help that process?
Maybe if we get together with some of the committee members, because I sort of got briefed on this about half an hour ago.
Okay.
Maybe we could put some information together, a bit of a case forward. Is that good?
Yep. It's probably time for budget submissions, so it's probably a good idea.
All right. So if we
I think someone might be able to get in touch with you probably now to have a bit of a chat with you. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Miss Chantal Meehan, please. Oh, great. Michael Sabata, please. Welcome, Mr Zabata.
Thank you, Mayor and Councillors. Michael Sabata, resident of South Melbourne. I have questions regarding the Middle Park Library. I asked questions 2 weeks ago and have not received a response to most of those questions. And therefore, I'd like to know when I will receive an answer to all the questions that I asked at the council meeting. My second point is the response that I did receive seemed to be based on a misunderstanding of the question. When I said that the visitor counter did not work, I mean it did not work, it did not count. The response I received was that the counter double counts. So my second question is, does the council understand that when I said that the counter does not work, and it has been reported that it has not worked for more than 4 years, which, as an aside, has been confirmed by multiple staff now, that does not work means it does not count. My third question is, if, as I suspect, that the councillors have been briefed that the double counting is the cause of any discrepancies and manual counting of by staff of visitors to Middle Park Library, how they could explain that in the many annual reports that you've done where you reported visitor numbers by branch, how the numbers could drop over the course of that period of 4 to 5 years when the counters, I've been assured, do not work, how double counting could actually make the count drop. There's a bit of a mathematical impossibility for those of you who are relatively numerate, and many people aren't. I'm a numbers person, so just to make that clear, you've reported for years the numbers have dropped.
Thank you, Mrs. Zabata. I think we heard you loud and clear the first time when you said that the counters weren't working at the other meeting, so I think that's what we heard.
You did.
I just wanted to clarify that we did hear that.
Okay. Then thank you, Mayor. Then I would ask how it's possible for senior officers to misunderstand that question.
Thank you very much. Was there any other questions?
Yes, there is, and it's regarding process. In the March report to Council on the public consultation regarding the refocus of Middle Park Library, is the Council planning on adopting a recommendation based on that report on the night, or is there going to be a chance for public input with regards to the recommendations that the officers are going to put before you?
So the 21st of March, the question is whether the 21st of March there'll be opportunity for...
no, that's, sorry.
Say that again, please.
So, my question is, will there be a period of public consultation, or will simply be the public needing to respond to the report that's going to be presented on the 21st of March? In other words, the public receives the report about 4 days. It's public about 4 days before the meeting, and is that the total period of time that's going to be allowed for any consultation, consideration, debate about on the recommendations for the future of Middle Park? Okay,
thank you. So the normal report cycle, is it going to be any different for the 21st for Middle Park? Right. Thank you. Ms Jeffs.
Through you, Madam Mayor. So on the counter issue, I definitely understood that you meant it not working, and I'll be looking into what answer you've been provided and why. Councillors weren't briefed on double counting or anything like that because we weren't really aware of that until you presented, Mr Zabata. So I think we can clarify the counting issue further. Apologies for that. The 21st of March report, no, there's not planned to be any additional engagement leading up to that report, but it is definitely open to the Council to decide to conduct more engagement. However, I would say that there's been quite a number of different engagement channels, and the engagement report that will be publicly presented to the Council is comprehensive and includes the survey, the public meeting, and a range of other engagement opportunities. So, it's up to the council resolution, but I would suggest that there's been quite an extensive amount of engagement to date.
Ms Jeffs, there was one other, and the question's taken on notice. When will Mr Zabata receive a answer to those?
Madam Mayor, I'll ensure that happens tomorrow.
Thank you, Ms Jeffs. Well, that's the end of public question time, councillors. Now we'll go to councillor question time. Councillor Pearl, you have a question. Actually, my apologies. We have a slight change to the agenda and I need to get out my sheet of paper here. So, just before we go to councillor question time, councillors, pursuant to council meetings procedure local law, the CEO has requested that I give consent to the adding of an agenda item to the meeting tonight relating to the presentation of an awards. I'll now call on the CEO to explain to council the importance of celebrating these awards and the process for tonight.
Thank you, and through you, Madam Mayor, I'm pleased to say that the council, both, and that includes the Mayor, councillors and its administration, have in the past won several awards, and more recently we've won 2 awards, and I think it's really important that those awards are presented at a council meeting and received by this council on behalf of the City of Port Phillip and the community of Port Phillip. The work we do here together is for our community. So I've asked that these awards, instead of going into the administration and sitting in a bookshelf somewhere, are actually presented to you as the governing body of the city on behalf of the community you represent. We've recently won 2 awards, and with leave, Madam Mayor, I'm going to ask Ms Blair to just present the 2 awards to you and to provide a brief explanation before doing that of why we've won these awards. Thank you, Ms Blair.
Thank you. So Council has been awarded 2 prestigious statewide environmental sustainability awards for our organic waste recycling. The first one is from the Institute of the Public Administration Australia Victorian Award, which was sponsored by Sustainability Victoria, and the second one was for the Local Government Professionals Award for Excellence in the Sustainability Award. The market's award-winning waste program includes 2 processes that recycle organic waste. The first is our vermicomposting worm farm project and the installation of the Gaia recycling machine that heats and dehydrates organic material. This has seen more than a 90% reduction in organic waste volume at the market and has spawned the production of 2 nutrient-rich garden fertiliser products now sold at the market. The market's the first retail market in Australia to adopt this technology, and the results have been excellent. To date, it has diverted about 950 tonnes of green and food waste from landfill, which equates to the same greenhouse gas reductions as taking 475 cars off the road, and our Gaia recycling machine over the course of a year recycles the equivalent of 20 Melbourne trams. So environmental sustainability has been at the heart of the market, and these initiatives are driven by a passionate team and made possible by the market family of traders, contractors and visitors and the broader City of Port Phillip team.
Present those 2 awards to the Mayor. Thank you. Thank you. Thanks, man. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms Blair and Mr Smith. I think it's an absolute credit to our South Melbourne market and our council too that we've received those awards, and I believe there might be a couple of others in the train. So we look forward to that. Now, back to councillor question time. Councillor Pearl.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. To take up one of the questions from Mr Woolett last meeting regarding the hiring of a consultant for the public consultation meeting, there was a question asked whether or not Council hired a consultant from Queensland. How much did those consultants cost for that meeting?
Ms Jeffs, do you have that information with you?
Through Madam Mayor, no, I don't have that with me, but I would like to say that the consultants were used for the meeting, but also to collate all of the engagement results and present that to Council. And there was an additional question on the night about whether we paid for flights and accommodation. No, we did not. So if I discover the amount during this meeting, I'll certainly let you know.
Thanks. And Councillor Pearl, the question was it'll go to Mr Woolett tomorrow and it'll be in the minutes for next meeting. Do you have a follow-up?
No, it's fine.
Any other questions, councillors? Councillor Crawford.
I would like to ask a question regarding the... oh, no, it's in a report. I'll come back to it, sorry.
That's okay. Any other questions, councillors? Yes, Councillor Pearl.
There was a request made by the Port Melbourne Colts Football Club to install two cameras, not CCTV, but cameras at the Murphy Reserve last year. They were willing to donate those cameras or the installation of those cameras. Could officers provide an update of where we're at with that project?
Ms Blair.
Through you, Madam Mayor, I'll need to double check the accuracy of the information that I'm going to give, but my understanding is that there has been some delays as we've been working through the design of the building in terms of the redevelopment, but I can provide some more detailed information. I can take that question on notice.
Thank you. Councillor Simic.
Just on that question, will the decision as to whether we accept the offer or not come to a council meeting, or how will that decision be made?
Through you, Madam Mayor. So the discussions that we've had with council to date, there's been agreement to allow the camera to be installed there. It's not CCTV cameras that are directly linked to the police station. It's ones that the club wanted to install. Separately to this, though, officers are currently going to provide council with a briefing that will talk about the need for a broader CCTV policy.
Councillor Simic, follow.
So, Ms Blair, just to understand properly what you're saying, so you said that officers have spoken to council. Do you mean councillors? I don't believe that we've made this decision at a council meeting previously. Is that incorrect?
Through you, Madam Mayor, no, that's correct. It hasn't been a decision for council. When we have discussed it, we gave advice that in that particular instance, because we weren't talking about CCTV that was connected into the police station, it was a different type of monitoring, that we didn't feel it needed to come to council in that instance.
While we're talking about Murphy's Reserve, I believe there was a significant theft there recently with the copper wires. Are you able to elaborate on how we can reduce the theft of this very expensive equipment going forward?
Sorry, through you, Madam Mayor, I'm unaware of that, so I'd have to take that question on notice.
Any further questions, councillors? If not, we'll move on to presentation of reports. Now, we haven't got any members of the public that have requested to speak, but we'll go first to presentation of the CEO report. Councillors, do you have any questions of the officers? Councillor Copsey?
Yes, I'll go to page 20 of that report and direction 3, which is we have smart solutions for a sustainable future. We have three outcome indicators at risk relating to potable water usage, greenhouse gas emissions and curbside waste division. And those account for all major policy directions under our Towards Zero policy. So I wondered what is being done to take those indicators back on track, away from at risk.
Mr. Carroll or Miss
Ferris-Miles?
Miss Ferris-Miles.
Through you, Madam Mayor. So we're currently working through developing a new sustainability strategy, which is scheduled to come to Council on the 4th of April. And as part of that strategy, we are looking at the targets that have been that are in the council plan, and whether those targets are appropriate or whether we need to look at other new targets and the corresponding actions that would match those, so that we can ensure that we would meet them. We recognise that the current targets are off track, and we are looking at ways to, in terms of the actions we've got in the council plan, to bring them back on track.
Thank you. I've got a couple of questions. If in the report, the maternal child health costs per hour has risen, which is an incredibly important service that we offer, has risen sharply. Is there any information that to tell us about why that might have risen quite sharply?
Through you, Madam Mayor, the cost is, I think what's happened is that the monthly targets are not smoothed out over the year. But I don't have more information than that. I can provide some follow-up information. Thanks.
Thank you. Sorry about that. It was a bit of a hard question. And I've also got a question on the street cleaning audit compliance, as is mentioned on page 37. Just wondering if you could, Ms Blair, tell me what that is? The street cleaning audit compliance. I just needed a bit of clarification about what that is.
The compliance is assessed by, we do regular audits on the street that are undertaken by staff who are in a different area to the street and beach cleaning team, and they go out each week and do random audits, checking compliance for particular service standards, and that's how that is measured.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Crawford.
Now I'll ask my question. My question is regarding Direction 1, where it's the J.L. Murphy Reserve Pavilion upgrade, and I noticed that because of the kitchen remodel, it's taken a lot longer, 11 weeks in delay in the project. So I just want to understand why that's occurred, and I guess is there a good reason for that kind of delay?
Through you, Madam Mayor. Yes, that is correct. There is an 11-week delay in the project. However, it's for very good reason. The clubs late last year requested, once they saw the design development in one of our consultation meetings, they asked that we look at relocating the kitchen in the layout that had previously agreed. The new design, which you'll receive council note for tomorrow, shows that it's the new design was agreed last Monday at the meeting. The reason it took a long time was through January and December, the industry is closed down. So we're working with architects, we were trying to meet with clubs, and we were inching our way through the process and understanding what the costs were so that the clubs could make an informed decision, which they did last Monday night. So we will do our best to catch that time up, but what it means is we're likely to commence construction in November this year instead of late September.
Thank you very much. Any other questions, councillors? Councillor Copsey?
Yes, again under Direction 3, but this time on the project overview. I note that the Eco Centre Service Opportunity Project is considered off track. I was wondering if I could get an explanation on why and what's being done to rectify that.
Thank you. Mr Walters?
Through you, Madam Mayor. The Eco Centre service opportunity comprises some minor building upgrades which are completed, the installation of some temporary buildings and some ramping and decking. The ramping and decking has been delayed, the other elements are completed, and we expect that to occur in the very near future.
Thank you. Any more questions? If not, we've got an officer's recommendation. Do I have a mover for that or something different? Councillor Gross to move, Councillor Crawford to second. Councillor Gross, would you like to speak to the report? Councillor Crawford.
I just think it's always fascinating to see the extent of what is happening in the municipality. So thank you.
Would anyone else like to speak to the report, the motion? If not, I'll put that. All those in favour? That's carried unanimously. Thank you. Ms Jeffs, I believe you have an answer to Mr Sabata's question. Councillor Pearl's question.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So the cost of the consultant was $17,600 for all of the pieces of work that I talked about earlier.
So just to follow up, were they an interstate consultant? So were they based in the city of Port Phillip, Victoria, Queensland? Where were they based?
The consultants were from Brisbane.
Councillors will now move to 9.1, which is the Balaclava Precinct, the Marlborough Street Affordable Housing Heads of Agreement. We've got no members of the public that have requested to speak to this item. Councillors, do you have any questions of the officers? Councillor Pearl?
My question is to Mr Carroll. Just wondering if you can take us through. The only real concern I have with this project is the long-term community benefit. So there's the expensive property council-owned assets, and we're divesting quite a few in this council and other councils. So my question is how did we come to ensure that the long-term benefit for council on a sale option is better than a lease option? So 100 years from now, the community, the benefit of this site to a future council, whoever they might be, may be better functioned with the option of a lease in the future than a transfer of sale.
Thank you, Mr Carroll. Or Ms McNeil.
Through you, Madam Mayor. The options available to council are up to 50-year lease or sale. A 99-year lease is not applicable here because it's not Crown land. And so the benefits, we feel that the benefits of a 50-year, over the 50 years, which the heads of agreement and ultimately any 173 agreement that prescribes the use, that within 50 years the benefits of that site in that location for affordable housing would be realised, but over indefinitely that land will be secured for affordable housing through the trust, and the trust has an option after 50 years of whether that location maintains or whether that same service is provided elsewhere. So that benefit will be secured indefinitely for the municipality.
Sure.
So what's the calculation of that benefit?
Through you, Madam Mayor, we haven't calculated a net present value as yet, but we can bring that to council as part of the information that we provide when we're asking council to make a decision around the sale.
So, Ms McNeil, I'll ask a question as well. This land is currently a car park, and it's to continue to be a car park. Can you just outline what guarantee there is that we won't lose the car parks there going forward?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The process that is being proposed is that the land will be subdivided and the car park component of that subdivision would be retained by council and the rest of the land would be transferred to the Housing Association, Port Phillip Housing Association Association Trust, and so the development won't be able to go ahead unless that, or the transfer won't go ahead at the end of the project unless we are able to retain the car parking there. So one of the key decisions for council when confirming the concept for the site is the amount of parking, and at the moment the majority of the parking is retained. So I think there's 47 on site now, and we're looking at 42 with the concept that's attached.
Thank you, Ms McNeil. Councillor Pearl.
Why did we attach plans to the agreement? As in, it's not attached to the agreement, but it's in the officer's report coming this evening, given that it's going to come to us as a planning authority, so we're slightly conflicted in some respects. But why is the plans being presented as part of the report when we don't have a final design? There could be private dwellings on this based on the funding model.
Through you, Madam Mayor, we felt it was important for the heads of agreement that a concept was included in that, so that council at this point in time and PPHA are signing up to a concept, and it's clear what that concept is. We do acknowledge that there may be change, and most likely will be change when you go through from concept to detailed design, but at the moment, it's important to acknowledge that any changes that happen that are significant will need to be approved by either party, and this is the baseline for that.
Councillor Pearl just mentioned that he feels there's a conflict here, being the landlord and the planning authority. Can you please speak to that?
Sure. Thank you, Madam Mayor. The council often has two hats or multiple hats that it wears. When council owns land or has land that it manages, it has the landlord hat that it wears, and it needs to provide, it has a certain role around that, and that then is distinct from the planning authority hat. And so in this instance, we're acting as landlord, council is acting as landlord, and we're advising council in its landlord capacity, and then this concept will need to go through a planning process where council will need to review it from its planning capacity, and that is often the case. It is not an uncommon situation. It occurs often.
Councillor Simic. Mr Carroll, you...
And if I can add to that, those hats are managed by different divisions and departments as well, so there's a clear separation.
Thank you for clarifying. Councillor Simic.
Thank you. I'm looking at the timeline provided at 11.1.2. It seems like an extraordinary amount of time that it will take for this process to complete. Given that this is identified in our council plan as a priority, the establishment of the Marlborough site, can you please elaborate on why this time frame so drawn out goes into the next council's term? Meaning there's a lot of opportunities for it to derail between now and then, and if there's any way that we can work to truncate this process.
Through you, Madam Mayor, the Port Phillip Housing Association is the one that would be delivering this project, and as such they have proposed the timelines, and we've been working with them on what is a timeline that council could sign up to. The constraining factor is state funding, and that has been delaying has potential to delay even further, but it has delayed the start of this. It is a significant factor within this. We have been working very strongly with them around the timeline, but this is the one that they feel they can sign up to and that we believe we can live with as well. So it's partially in our control, and also with our partner as well.
Mr Carroll.
Through you, Madam Mayor, the timelines and the contractual and the heads of agreement have also got a fair bit of contingency put in them, because the penalties that apply if those timeframes aren't met are fairly severe in terms of the transaction would not occur, and there could be a significant amount of effort that's been expended by PPHA in developing the concept and the project. We are working to a target timeline that is quicker than that, but we didn't think it was prudent to include that in the heads of agreement if it wasn't able to be maintained.
Simic? Yep.
Just to follow up and ask a question in relation to our backyard strategy. My understanding is that the Marlborough Street project is a significant component in us being able to achieve the backyard strategy. How does this timeline impact on our ability to work towards the targets set out in our backyard strategy?
Ms Ferris-Miles?
Through you, Madam Mayor. In our backyard, under Policy 1, includes a goal to achieve 170 new units over the next 10 years on council-owned land. The 10 years is from 2015 to 2025. This development in Marlborough Street is our first development opportunity and starts the pipeline of opportunity. So this definitely sits within that time window of in our backyard policy, and we're now working very closely with our property team to identify the next opportunities to start project number 2 to meet that in our backyard policy objective.
Councillor Bond.
This project is dependent upon state government funding. Has that state government funding been announced as yet?
Through you, Madam Mayor. No, the funding hasn't been specifically allocated to this project, and so it is a project risk where the state government have been quite slow in gearing up for distributing the funding, and the first step has been to announce the seed funding, so supporting projects to get off the ground. But we have been working closely with our partners in state government on this, and so we will continue to do so and submit a bid to that funding.
Thank you, Ms McNeil. Any other questions, councillors? Councillor Pearl.
Is there anyone from Port Phillip Housing Association here tonight?
Through you, Madam Mayor, there is not. They were unable to attend tonight, but acknowledged that the report was going up and passed on their regret they couldn't attend.
Thank you. Mr Carroll.
And through you, Madam Mayor, that we are working very closely and very collaboratively with PPHA. This project is something that we're both very committed to, and the relationship is very strong, so I wouldn't take from their non-attendance tonight as any slight on the council or its commitment to this project.
Thank you, Mr Carroll. Councillors, we have an officer's recommendation. Do I have a mover for that or something different? Councillor Copsey to move, Councillor Gross to second. Councillor Copsey, would you like to speak to the motion? Councillor Gross, would you like to speak to the motion?
I just want to say a few obvious things about this. We have certain strategic obligations in terms of our aims for fulfilling our in our backyard policy, and this is obviously an exciting first step. Secondly, I know there's been some time since we've done something such as this, so I'm claiming full credit. In between, the last one was also in Marlborough Street, and prior to that we had one in Kime Place, and yeah, I'm feeling good about myself. It's all about me.
Good to know.
But on a serious note, the City of Port Phillip and its predecessor councils have a grand and, in Australian terms, unprecedented record in this area. And fulfilling our obligations in this area is something that gives great credit to this council. And I think that this is an idea that's been around for a long, long time. And it's great to see that we're enacting it. So I'm pretty pumped.
Thank you, Councillor Gross. Would any other councillor like to speak to the motion? Councillor Pearl.
PPHA spends a lot of time canvassing councillors and council officers, but the community needs to be on board with this project, and we're not off to a good start by not having anyone from PPHA turn up this evening and start that process of selling this project and what they can offer this project to the community by not turning up this evening. I gave ANAM a similar stick when they didn't turn up to their lease contract, and I expected better from PPHA, and I hope that message can be conveyed. This is the initial step, obviously, but also going forward, if we could get some information about the best long-term benefit for this site, I think it's reasonably compelling from what officers have told us that this is the best initial use of the site, but we need to have a commitment to future generations that as our community changes and evolves, that we have optionality around that site where we might be able to repurpose it for another function, such as a school or an old age home or more affordable housing, whatever that may be for future generations. It's an expensive block of land now. It'll be even more expensive in the future, and land isn't getting any cheaper from what I see. So I'd encourage us to make sure we have the information to make the appropriate decision when that time comes along.
Thank you, Councillor Pearl. Councillor Simic.
I have the pleasure of sitting on the Board of Directors of PPHA as one of the council-nominated directors. And that highlights really our long relationship with the Port Phillip Housing Association and the important relationship that we have with the organisation. I'd like to point out that we've been working on this project, talking about it for, I believe, over 10 years. It's been a long time coming. I think that the benefits of the project have been very clearly articulated by PPHA in the past, and Council. In our council plan, we identified this as a priority. I am glad to hear from Mr. Carroll that we have a strong relationship with the Port Phillip Housing Association, and that we've worked very closely with them on where we're up to currently. This project can't succeed without a good partnership. We can't have more increased housing in our municipality unless we partner with organisations and provide that community social housing for people. So we have to work with organisations like PPHA. We have to work with the state government in order to achieve the goals we've set ourselves in our backyard strategy. So it's our role as councillors to make sure that we are selling and talking about the importance of these projects and ensuring that they continue into the future for all future generations.
Anyone else wanting to speak to the motion? Councillor Baxter.
Yeah, look, sorry, pardon me. So this is an exciting stage to get to, and I share some of the frustration in terms of sort of how long this has been going on for. But it's nice to see that we're at this stage. I think that this site is an incredibly strategically valuable site, and it's currently providing parking, and it's good to see that it will continue to provide that use, but more. And so it's good to be able to see that this will be another addition to the Trust's ability to manage the amount of social housing there, and of course that trust will have the capability to increase that in future or make changes, and that's I think a really good thing. So I'm pleased that we're here. The location is fantastic, particularly from a sustainability perspective in terms of access to public transport. So I'm happy.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to speak? Then I'll also speak. I just think congratulations needs to be in order for this. We are commencing the statutory process. We are moving forward, and I'm really happy to take it to the public to see what they have to say about this. We do have a huge mountain to climb on affordable housing to keep it at that 7.5%. Every day that goes past, there's more apartments and more residents being built, so that percentage goes down and down. So in order to keep that level peg at 7.5%, we do need to get our skates on, and that's no mean feat. And this is one step in the process, and I look forward to all of our next work that we're doing to keep up that percentage. And I think it is important to acknowledge and celebrate the milestones such as they are. It has been a long gestation, but we are finally, getting there, and just like to acknowledge that. Councillor Copsey, would you like to close?
It is exciting, and it's urgent. Everyone has alluded to the housing pressures that we face in our area. The recent street count that was conducted found 91 people sleeping rough in the city of Port Phillip, and that level of visible homelessness is just the tip of the iceberg in terms of the challenges that we're facing locally with supply of social and public housing and community housing, right through to affordable housing. So I'm very proud to be part of a council that has such a strong record in this regard. It's one that we can uphold and should continue to uphold in investing directly in the provision of affordable housing in a municipality. It's no small thing for a municipal government to trigger these sorts of developments. It can't be done without the work of the amazing partners who work tirelessly on projects like this, and the partnership of the state government. I do hope that the funding announcement will be forthcoming shortly, and that we can get on with this great project. I am just really looking forward to, when this project is completed and the doors open, it will be providing actual, safe, secure, affordable homes for people that are so desperately needed locally. And that's really something to look forward to. It's a human right, and we're going to be making it a reality. I'm quite proud.
Thank you. I'll now put that motion. All those in favour? That's carried unanimously. Thank you very much. And we'll move to item 11, I think. Yes, 11.1, which is the Sustainable City Community Action Plan. No speakers to this, councillors? Councillors, do you have any questions? Councillor Baxter? No? Councillors, any questions to this? There isn't? No? Then I have an officer's recommendation. I might just ask. Councillor Copsey, question.
So for those who are watching and who are interested in this space, of which I know there are many in our municipality, I was just wondering if officers could briefly explain how this plan interacts with the sustainable environment strategy that is being developed by Council currently.
Through you, Madam Mayor. In the Council plan, Council committed to both a sustainable environment strategy and the Sustainable City Community Action Plan. The sustainable environment strategy covers a wider range of areas, including Council's own environmental sustainability. This action plan is very much focused on supporting our community to take sustainable choices.
Thank you very much. Oh, Mr. Walter.
Just to add a little bit. Once the Sustainable Environment Strategy has been endorsed, the action plan may change slightly to reflect more accurately the directions in that.
Thank you. And just further to that question, what is the status then of this action plan going forward?
Through you, Madam Mayor, could you sort of rephrase that slightly? Status in terms of
where will it sit under, and okay. Yeah, what is its status?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The Sustainable Environment Strategy would be the overarching strategy, so the Sustainable City Community Action Plan will sit underneath that.
Thank you, Ms Patton. Any other questions, councillors? Then we have an officer's recommendation, which is very brief, which is endorse the Sustainable City Community Action Plan. Councillor Baxter to move, Councillor Simic to second. Councillor Baxter, would you like to speak to the motion?
Yeah, look, I think even the people on the camera can see I'm fading fast tonight because I'm not feeling well. But I will very briefly speak to this. Basically, we've had a look at this. Members of our community have had their chance to have their say, and it looks as though this is going to be a really, really good vehicle for how we're going to tackle one of the most important issues in our environmental sort of makeup of how we tackle climate change. We can reduce emissions from council buildings, but that's a drop in the ocean compared to the community emissions that are out there. And so this is a good funded, hopefully a start over a long period of time, but this is a really good direction to go into to encourage people across the municipality and give them more options to be able to reduce their emissions, become more energy efficient, and reduce that footprint. We've already seen, people out there off their own bat organising within their own apartment buildings to be able to massively bring down their energy usage and therefore their emissions. For us to be able to assist them with that is something that's pretty awesome. So I can't wait to see how this goes.
Thank you, Councillor Baxter. Councillor Simic. Would anyone else like to speak to this motion? Councillor Crawford.
I think what I like about this particular report or action plan, taking it forward, is that I live in a flat and that there is a lot of ideas around how to look to assist people who either own or rent. As it's easy to put solar panels on a house well, not easy if you're going to have money, but that's a much simpler prospect than if you own a flat of 30 apartments and how limited roof space and dividing it. So looking at the ways, the new models of how that's, renting energy from other places and all of the things that might be incorporated in looking at how we can be more sustainable, I think, and giving examples showing how it's possible to various body corporates around the city, given we're so densified, I think will be actually really powerful. I did want to point out one really key thing that's written in there that I actually really like, and given the very rapidly changing face of waste and recycling in the country at the moment, I love that it says this action plan is a guide to the next 3 years but not a rule book, and if the actions don't work we will not continue them. And I really like that it's going to be like a flexible adaptive model, because the technology and the ideas and the way we do things is changing so rapidly. So yes, I'm in support of this particular action plan.
Thank you. Anybody else like to speak? Councillor Councillor Copsey.
Too many C's and B's, but too many of both. Yeah, this is a great document and really, really exciting. Whilst we've got a relatively refreshed council in this group of councillors, and so we're doing some really big work to develop new strategies in alignment with our council plan, this is a really practical document, and it's actioning some things that we know the community is passionate about and have been asking for and working on in collaboration with council for quite some time. I just want to highlight the apartment and business energy efficiency and behaviour change programs. There's such capacity within our municipality to tackle this problem, which is a really common one in big cities, and if we can get some really good results out of this, I think it will be a great exemplar. There's also the solar bulk buy, which I've had meetings with residents over the course of the term so far who are just desperate to see this go ahead, and I'm really delighted that we can be facilitating this. So some really solid practical actions in here that will help those who are seeking to take sustainability action in the community realise those goals, but also lead to an actual real-world reduction in emissions. It's fantastic, and I'm really excited to see it come to us tonight.
Thank you. I'll also speak. So I just wanted to say that this action plan is really clear. And it's very clear how council is going to support the community to reduce their greenhouse gas emissions, their waste, their water consumption. And I also just wanted to particularly thank the officers for the plain English that it's written in, that there is no tech talk in it, and it's very simple for anyone, to understand, and I think we need to see more of that. So thank you very much. Councillor Pearl, you'd also
I'll
like to
speak quickly because I'm voting against it. So the reason I'm voting against it, albeit I agree with the Mayor, it's quite concisely worded and well worded, which is good in terms of general planning. But this was fairly, well, conjectures is probably the wrong word when we were talking about this in the budget process, and at $300,000, this extends the role of council to a realm which I've been very publicly opposed to for some time. So, albeit well done to the officers for writing it well, I don't support spending $300,000 over 3 years on this type of initiative.
Thank you, Councillor Pearl. Councillor Baxter, would you like to close?
Sure. Well, look, that last speech was disappointing, but I think that there's a lot of goodwill here and an excellent plan, and I think that there's absolutely, from what I hear, a massive amount of support in the community for ways that council can help them overcome some of the roadblocks to doing the right thing by our community and our planet. So I'll commend it.
Thank you, Councillor Baxter. I'll put that motion. All those in favour? All those against? That's carried.
May I request a division, please?
Councillor Copsey has requested a division, so I'll put that motion again. All those in favour? Councillor Baxter, Councillor Crawford, Councillor Gross, Councillor Voss, Councillor Simic, Councillor Brand and Councillor Copsey. All those against? Councillor Pearl and Councillor Bond. That motion is carried. Now we'll move to item 14, organisational performance. 14.1, the City of Port Phillip's submission to the draft Local Government Act Bill. Again, councillors, we haven't got anyone that's requested to speak from the public. Councillors, do you have any questions of the officers? If not, we have an officer's recommendation. Do I have a mover for that or something different? Councillor Copsey?
I have an alternate recommendation I'd like to move.
Thank you. Would you like to read that?
Yes, thank you. So this alternate motion is simply adding an extra point to the submission. Thank you, officers, for your assistance in drafting the wording for this today. It reads 3.4, the Council 3.4. Subject to resolving recommendation 3.3, endorses the draft submission as outlined in attachment 1, with the addition of a statement about the important advocacy role local government plays for its local community to other governments, and in light of this importance, requests that an additional subsection be inserted in clause 8 brackets 2 of the draft exposure bill about the role local government plays in advocating in the interests of the municipal community to other communities and governments, and that this should be encouraged.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Baxter. Councillor Copsey, please speak to your motion.
So it's come out a bit wordier than I would have liked, but what this motion does is adds the ability for officers to formulate some words that support the important advocacy role of local government. This came about as a result of, I became aware that the Victorian Gay and Lesbian Rights Lobby has made a single issue submission, I believe, on this topic to the Local Government Act review, and is urging that municipal governments should explicitly retain the ability to advocate on issues that are important to their local community. I understand. Would you like me to pause?
Councillor Copsey, please keep going.
We saw an incredibly important example of this this year with the marriage in the last 12 months with the marriage equality postal survey, which was taken. This council took an advocacy position on behalf of our community, supporting equality for all people in our municipality, regardless of their sexuality or gender identity. And I know for a fact that it made a huge difference to people who were feeling very vulnerable as a result of that process. Our visible support was important for those individual community members, and I think it was also important for us as a council that stands up for equality and human rights. So that is just one example. It happens every day. I think that the housing work that we do is another great living example of when that advocacy role is really crucial for local governments. It's odd that advocacy has disappeared as a specific item that's noted in the local government bill draft exposure, and I agree with the Victorian Gay and Lesbian Rights Lobby that it should be back in. It's one of our most crucial functions. So I commend this alternate motion to councillors.
Thank you, Councillor Copsey. Councillor Baxter, would you like to speak to the motion?
I will. So I'll speak to the overall motion as well. So Council is making a submission to the State Government's Exposure Draft Local Government Act Bill. This has been in the works for a really, really long time, and it's about updating and clarifying the Local Government Act, which has been amended sort of 1,000 times in the past, and so they're trying to take this opportunity to put a nice, clean, new thing in, and that's great, but our submission does show that there are some proposals there that we're not particularly pleased with, and we think there are some issues there. That's in the document. I won't speak too much to them. I'll speak to this particular motion. I think that it is important that while the draft exposure bill doesn't rule out advocacy by councils, it's sort of implicit in there. I think it's quite important that it should be made explicit, because that is actually one of our roles. It's our job to look out for our community, and where we don't have the power to do that within our own box, we need to be able to advocate that those who do have the power to make the changes that we want can do so. And I think that the examples used of us sticking up for minority groups or people who are affected by outside events, we need to be able to retain the ability to do that. So I support this amendment.
Thank you, Councillor Baxter. Would anyone else like to speak to this motion? Councillor Brand?
Yes, I just want to support it as well. I'm surprised that it wasn't in there when it was pointed out to me that it wasn't in there. It is an obvious thing that Council does. I think just as the Prime Minister speaks for us as a nation sometimes, and you want them not just to be sticking to the legislation, but actually coming out with a stance or a moral position or an advocacy in the international sector. I think that the Mayor can do that for us, even if it isn't a dead set local issue. I just think that the scope of what Council does as a government has this scope, has this dimension built into it, and I think it's good to be recognised in the Act.
Thank you, Councillor Brand. Would anyone else like to speak? Councillor Copsey, would you like to close?
I'll just touch on the rest of the submission, which I didn't really do in the initial speech, sorry. Thank you very much to officers for the work that's gone into developing this. I know that this council is putting in some feedback that is similar to other local governments. There are aspects of the local government bill that are in line with its purpose of allowing local governments to retain a lot of their powers and to respond to the needs of their community, but there are others where some of the proposed changes to me and according to this submission to our organisation seem at odds, and so where councils have had, where the proposal is to, for example, remove the ability of councils to select the method by which the local government election is conducted, to set its own system for ratings assessment. These are examples where I don't think that the draft bill achieves its stated intent, and I do hope that they are treated seriously and taken on board by the state government. The one around NAV to CIV rating methodology is so complex that your average person would have no idea of the... Well, your average person, and yeah, indeed, your average council, this stuff is complex and has the ability to massively impact on our rating base. There is potential that it could be inequitable in some ways, and so I'm really pleased that our submission has picked that up, and I do hope that we'll be successful and that these requests from Port Phillip and other councils don't fall on deaf ears.
Thank you, Councillor Copsey. I'll put that motion. All those in favour? That's carried unanimously. Thank you very much. Now, councillors, we have, pursuant to council's meeting procedure local law, the CEO has requested I have given consent to the adding of a late agenda item to the meeting tonight, relating to placing on the public record a correction of an error that was contained in a report for Council for the 1st of November 2017. This report relates to amendments to the Community Amenity Local Law Number 1, and the error was in relation to camping on Council land by homeless people and or persons with complex needs. I'll now call on Ms Fiona Blair, General Manager Infrastructure and Amenity, to speak to this report.
Through you, Madam Mayor, this report seeks to rectify an error that was made in the council report that was presented on the 1st of November in 2017. That report inaccurately stated that Clause 53, camping on council land, had been amended to include exemptions for camping by homeless and persons with complex needs. This adds clarity to the definition of homeless and exemptions. That was actually an error. There was no change to that clause. That clause has actually been in place since the 24th of September 2001, and this report seeks to make an amendment, a citation to that report, so that we can have that corrected on the record.
Thank you, Ms Blair. I will open this questions at this point in time. Does anyone have any questions that they need clarified in terms of what we're doing here? Terrific. Then we have a recommendation here. Do you have a mover? Councillor Gross to move. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Copsey, would you like to speak? Councillor Gross?
Just to say, this is an inadvertent error. It was unfortunately highlighted with too much prominence. And the error was compounded, so I think we're obliged to remediate the record. These unfortunate things happen, and but I actually remember the amendment, and it was an important amendment at the time, and I thought that the Mayor did a fantastic job of stating both the policy background and the fact that it was quite an old provision, and this is just a tidying up exercise, and I think given the prominence it's important so to do.
Thank you, Councillor Gross. Councillor Copsey, would you like to speak? Would anyone else like to speak? Then I'll put that motion. All those in favour? That's carried unanimously. Thank you very much. Notices of motion, item 15, and councillors, we have no notices of motion tonight. Item 16, reports by councillor delegates. Do we have any reports, councillors? Councillor Baxter.
I'll be very brief. The Association of Bayside Municipalities had its annual dinner on Friday night, and we basically brought together councillors and officers from the 10 Bayside municipalities around Port Phillip Bay, and we had some of our excellent team come down and talk about some of the amazing projects that we've been doing in terms of how we're dealing with coastal issues, and we got to see what other councils are doing around the Bay as well, and it's just a great opportunity for knowledge sharing, and it went really well, so we're doing plenty.
Great to hear. Councillor Gross?
I should note on the record, so I'm the delegate to the Metropolitan Waste Forum. The Metropolitan Waste Forum held elections for the chair and deputy chair. No one stood. So,
who was elected?
So Dot was elected from, Councillor Dot, I forget her surname, from I think Casey, and I stood and had a contested election for the deputy dog, and
Try to get somebody else to clap.
look, so just to put some context around this, the Metropolitan Waste Forum is an impotent talk shop, and and just speaking personally, I can't speak on behalf of the council on this, you know, I've been really disappointed with the Metropolitan response to waste management over the past decade, 15 years maybe. You know, when we put up our hand on our heart and say, what have we done? And I think not that much, and I think it's important to keep reminding ourselves of that, and that's given us a challenge and an opportunity in relation to Fisherman's Bend, but we should not be doing that. Other people should be doing it. But nature abhors a vacuum, and we've poured ourselves into that vacuum with a degree of exciting expertise, it has to be said. So I'm meeting with them on Friday. I foreshadowed that, you know, it's a really pretty irrelevant position, and I'm going to be using it just to give myself a title about being pushy and obnoxious. And they know I'm going to be pushy and obnoxious, and they don't ask me questions when I want to.
Thank you, Councillor Gross. I'd just like to formally congratulate you on your new position, and I do hope you use it to its full advantage. Any other reports? Councillor Copsey? Thank you.
The Cultural Development Fund hasn't met, but I just wanted to highlight that applications to the 2018-19 round of the Cultural Development Fund, which is one of Council's arts and creative funding streams, are now open, and they are open until the 29th of March. So any creatives who are watching, please get us your applications now. Anything from singing, dancing, art, games. I would like to, you know, see lots and lots of new names and exciting projects coming through, so that when we do meet, we've got something really exciting to look at. 29th of March, get them in.
Anybody else? Okay, thank you. We'll now move to urgent business. Councillors, are there any items of urgent business? So, councillors, the CEO has one item of urgent business, which is confidential, which relates to a land valuation matter which is currently in dispute. So we've got sort of a bit of a three-step process here. Councillors, I need a mover and a seconder for us to consider the item first. Councillor Pearl to move, Councillor Bond to second. I'll now put that motion. All those in favour? That's carried unanimously. Thank you. And now I'm going to call on a councillor to move that the meeting be closed to the members of the public. So Councillor Brand and Councillor Bond to second. All those in favour? That's carried unanimously. I'll now wait till the gallery is closed. Thank you very much.